Hello, Khenpo. I am a student from the School of Foreign Studies at Suzhou University. I've only recently come into contact with Buddhism, so my understanding may not be very deep. I have a few questions that I'd like to ask you, Khenpo. During my studies, I noticed that Buddhists and non-Buddhists may have some conflicts in terms of values and perspectives on life. I would like to ask Khenpo to give us some guidance on this. How should we handle the relationship between the two? Thank you.
From my own personal understanding and observation, although Buddhists and non-Buddhists may often differ significantly in their core values and their broader perspectives on the meaning of life, as well as in many of their specific everyday behaviors and cultural practices, they still share a lot in common. While there are certainly some contradictions or conflicts that appear on the surface, the underlying truth is quite the same. In reality, even among non-Buddhists in their everyday lives, if an individual is genuinely kind-hearted and conducts their daily affairs in a highly reasonable, thoughtful, and deeply considerate way, this way of living actually aligns perfectly with the fundamental spiritual concepts and core values that Buddhism consistently emphasizes and promotes. Because when it comes to the matter of being a truly good person, I have also thought about this question quite a bit myself, that generally in our own daily lives, the good ways of living, these ideas do not conflict with the teachings of Buddhism in any way. To put it in simple terms, Buddhism focuses on the practice of the 10 virtues. In terms of physical conduct, one should refrain from killing, stealing, or engaging in sexual misconduct. Regarding the discipline of speech, one should not tell lies, use frivolous words, sow seeds of discord among people, or speak harshly. Within the realm of the mind, one must strive not to be overly greedy or harbor intense worldly desires. One ought not to harbor any anger and should not maintain prejudices or biases against anything. In fact, these qualities should be part of being a good person. It's just that they don't specifically mention the 10 virtues from Buddhism. In reality, anyone with a relatively perfect and well-rounded character will diligently strive and work hard in these areas. Therefore, whether in scholarly academic research or when we gather together in various settings, not only do I not reject non-Buddhists, but I sincerely and especially hope for the opportunity to work with them. It is important that some non-Buddhists can understand that Buddhism is not a mere superstition. Just as the scholar Liang Qichao once famously said, Buddhism is not superstition, rather it is a profound faith that is deeply based on wisdom. To be honest, whether it's research or not, I cannot honestly claim to have conducted any formal research myself, but I have dedicated a significant amount of my time to studying or reading Buddhist teachings. For many years now. At the same time, I have also read many highly valuable theories from both ancient and modern times, from China and abroad. The conclusion I have come to is this: even if you haven't studied Buddhism, as long as you strive to be a good person, then none of your actions will be in conflict with Buddhism. But if you are a bad person, then not only will you be in conflict with Buddhism, in real life they are often looked down upon by everyone. You yourself have also violated the principles of truth. If you are truly dedicated to speaking the truth, then it can be said that Buddhism has no inherent conflict or contradiction regarding the truth. If you do not speak the truth, this viewpoint completely contradicts the teachings of Buddhism in every single way.
Thank you very much. Hello, Khenpo. I am a graduate of Suzhou University of Science and Technology. I have been a dedicated Buddhist for over a year now. Many of my classmates and colleagues around me would all think Buddhist wisdom on how to conduct oneself in society, as well as various techniques for understanding complex concepts. All those Buddhist principles are very reasonable. But when it comes to the part about mysterious and supernatural forces, they don't really believe it and tend to have misguided or incorrect perspectives. Even in my own personal experience, I always feel that if I haven't witnessed these things with my own eyes, I can't really bring myself to believe it. How exactly should this challenge be overcome? Please, Khenpo, give us some guidance. And what exactly do you mean by the term supernatural? For example, consider the law of cause and effect spanning across 3 lifetimes. These are the kinds of things that we simply cannot see. We also have concepts like karmic creditors and other similar phenomena. In essence, these are realities that even our current science has not yet been able to fully prove.
Actually, this phenomenon of yours, on one hand, may be closely related to the distinct differences in your upbringing and the specific environment you grew up in since childhood. But the most crucial point is regarding what you call supernatural just now. During my detailed discussion with everyone here, I briefly mentioned the profound concepts of past and future lives to help explain this. Actually, when it comes to the law of cause and effect across 3 lifetimes and the issue of past and future lives, I have spent a great deal of time and have also held many academic discussions on this topic. I have specifically explored this issue in great depth, and I have also sought out a lot of current scientific evidence. Therefore, your earlier statement that there is no scientific basis is completely unfounded. Past and future lives do exist. While it is true that many scientists hailing from countries with highly advanced scientific infrastructures do not all subscribe to this particular supernatural concept, there remains a very considerable number of deeply authoritative and respected scientists who have meticulously provided compelling evidence supporting the existence of both past and future lives. I once translated a book called On Past and Present Lives, and about 10 years ago I wrote a book titled On Buddhist Science. There are many fundamental principles that are commonly acknowledged by both Buddhism and science in it. Of course, in the very beginning, if you simply can't see it with your own eyes, or even begin to imagine it in your mind, not accepting these things is actually not logical. Because in the complex world we live in today, there are so many things we cannot see, and so many things we cannot touch. This includes phenomena like electromagnetic waves in quantum physics and many other invisible forces that surround us. We cannot perceive them with our naked eyes right now, but specialized experts certainly can. Similarly, there hasn't been any real scientific research into the nature of consciousness itself. Just yesterday, when I was having a detailed discussion with Master Jikun from Suzhou, we touched upon these ideas. While we were exploring these topics together, we discovered that we held exactly the same views. In the future, Buddhist psychology will be truly extraordinary and remarkable, including the scientist Yu Jibiao from the past, who successfully integrated Yogacara, consciousness-only philosophy, with the field of modern psychology. In his work, A Scientist's Report on the Study of Buddhist Scriptures, he provided a specific discussion of some of these topics. So we may truly need to undertake more extensive and thorough research to see whether things that are truly invisible really don't exist and whether karmic creditors truly don't exist. If you personally interview people who have actually been disturbed by karmic creditors, I can even recommend some celebrities and famous people to you from my side. If you ask them personally, you might have no choice but to admit it.
Hello, Khenpo. I am a student from the philosophy class at the School of Management. As far as I know, Master Taishu proposed the concept of human life Buddhism, and Master Xing Yun evolved it into Humanistic Buddhism. Currently, the ideology of Humanistic Buddhism has gained widespread recognition and support in our country. I would like to ask you, has Tibetan Buddhism been influenced or impacted by the trend of Humanistic Buddhism? What do you think Tibetan Buddhism should do in response to this trend of thought? Thank you.
Actually, Tibetan Buddhism. In actual fact, Humanistic Buddhism had no negative impact on its development, but its philosophy is especially well suited to Tibetan Buddhism. As I mentioned earlier, the cultural history of Tibet spans over 2,000 years, and it has already become an inseparable part of each individual's daily life, whether walking, standing, sitting, or lying down. This philosophy, one could say, is deeply embedded in the daily life of Tibetans. Humanistic Buddhism has already truly become a fundamental way of life here. It is just that within the various Han Chinese regions, the Venerable Master Taishu and Master Xing Yun later introduced a profound new philosophy to the people, which could also be seen as a new reform or a new revolution. And in this way, they promoted Humanistic Buddhism. In the Tibetan area, some of the major teachings, such as Mahamudra, Madhyamaka, and Dzogchen, in Tibetan Buddhism, these teachings are at a relatively high wisdom level, and it may still take some time to fully and effectively integrate them into daily life. Including our academic exchange today, I haven't talked about the more profound principles of the Dharma. I could discuss these theories, but even if I did, many people might not necessarily understand them. That's why I spoke about the simplest practices, like turning prayer wheels and offering lamps. These are part of Humanistic Buddhism. Just as Professor Wu pointed out just a moment ago, on the surface, these seem like nothing more than simple actions. But if you don't understand the cultural and historical context behind these actions, people have always had a certain prejudice against it. But in fact, this prejudice does not align with our theories. Confucius once profoundly observed that any form of knowledge, if separated from its foundational rituals, will see its culture suffer as a result. Building upon this, I believe that humanistic Buddhism actually appeared much earlier within the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, as seen in their spiritual practices and daily communal life. The entire Tibetan region is a domain that promotes humanistic Buddhism. Consequently, in this wave, there absolutely won't be even the slightest bit of impact. Of course, we now need to adapt to this society, to the 21st century. This may require a variety of approaches that fit with modern views on our daily lives. This is a crucial matter that many Buddhists today need to pay close attention to.
Hello, Venerable Khenpo. I am a student from Shanghai Jiaotong University, and I have come here today specifically to listen to your insightful lecture. In our daily lives, when we are working or studying for a very long time, we often find that we tend to get quite drowsy or even doze off very easily. I would like to ask if there are any particularly good solutions or practical methods for this within the teachings of Buddhism. During the process of doing things, how can we maintain a focused and alert state for a long period of time? Venerable Khenpo, could you please answer this for us? Thank you.
Actually, in Tibetan Buddhism, if you start to doze off, the best method is to gently shake your head back and forth for a moment. Simply looking upward with your eyes is also a helpful method. In many meditation practices, if you find your mind is feeling especially distracted or restless, you should gaze gently downward with your eyes and maintain a completely still and steady posture. If your mind feels particularly drowsy or you feel like you are falling asleep, on one hand you can try to move your body just a little bit. Of course, as you just mentioned regarding how to do things, some people certainly have their own unique style of working. To see things through from beginning to end requires a certain degree of resilience. In particular, I've noticed that many young people nowadays, even when looking for jobs, often work in one department for a short while today, then move somewhere else tomorrow, and then to yet another place the very day after. This kind of behavior is quite unwise. Whatever you choose to do, you should really try to have a much more steady, stable, and consistent mindset. Personally, I believe that no matter what you do, as long as you have made up your mind to do something, regardless of the problems or hardships you encounter, you shouldn't let your heart waver or retreat because of them. Especially nowadays, many young people tend to throw in the towel as soon as they face even a little adversity or difficulty. In fact, when we encounter these moments of difficulties and pain, our hearts need to be even stronger and more resilient. There is a well-known story about the mother of former United States President Dwight D. Eisenhower. She observed that whenever the family sat down to play cards, her young son would often get quite frustrated and upset if he wasn't dealt a good hand. Later, his mother told him, "If you can play a bad hand beautifully, that's a kind of wisdom." Later, during his presidential campaign, he really faced a very tough situation, but he was able to turn his pain and adversity into something useful and found happiness even in suffering. Nowadays, when many people encounter difficulties, they often find they can't turn these heavy difficulties or complex problems into something simple. We should, in the very midst of complicated, painful, or troublesome matters, use our own inner wisdom to find a sense of happiness. This is truly the most wise and sensible choice for us to make. Therefore, when the mind is feeling restless or unstable, we should use wisdom to stabilize it and make more sensible and well-considered decisions. In this way, whatever you do in the future will definitely be efficient.
Good afternoon. I am a lecturer from Suzhou University. Today, it is a great honor, and I am very fortunate to attend your lecture. I have a few questions that I would like to ask, but I want to keep them relatively simple. I would like to ask just two specific questions. One is that when we practice Chinese Han Buddhism, we often use this analogy. It is said that the Tathagata Garbha, the inherently pure mind, is like water. When stirred by the wind of ignorance, waves are produced. Because there are waves, there is a kind of illusory existence. When we see that the waves themselves are just the nature of water, we then perceive emptiness. But this analogy raises a question. Where does the wind of ignorance come from? If the entire world is just the nature of water, then how does ignorance arise? Of course, we can explain it from our current circumstances. We encounter something troubling, a certain appearance, and a troubled mind arises within us. But the problem is that this appearance itself is also produced by a troubled consciousness. This creates a paradox. First, a troubled appearance leads to a troubled mind. It's cause and effect, mind first, then appearance. Another view is that mind and appearance arise simultaneously. If they emerge simultaneously, how could that possibly be possible within themselves? Why do they arise at the same time? Where does this possibility come from? This is the first question. Within such an overall field of thought, how do I grasp the question of how ignorance is possible? That's the first question. The second one is also something I've never been able to figure out. In the context of dependent origination, how can we establish a kind of order and rules? That is to say, how are rules and order established? Because we usually say that a person's moral sense, the arising of bodhicitta, when you perceive emptiness, it can be like this. But the issue is about a kind of order. And if we discuss the concept of order in terms of conventional or secular level, it appears to be fundamentally something that arises from attachment. But if we say that things arising from attachment, shouldn't they be broken or transcended to a certain extent? And only at the level of complete flexibility can it be taken back again. But this very attachment itself, behind all phenomena, there is a set of rules. This set of rules can be explained scientifically, and of course, it can also be explained in terms of karma across the 3 times. How can the law of cause and effect be established within the context of dependent origination? This is the second question I would like to ask you.
All right. This is the way that I personally understand it. First, with respect to the question of Tathagatagarbha. In fact, within the tradition of Chinese Han Buddhism, there is a profound analogy involving water and waves. Furthermore, in the sutras of the third turning of the Dharma wheel, we find another analogy comparing the sky and the clouds. If we apply this analogy of water and waves, the vast ocean corresponds directly to the essence of Tathagatagarbha, representing the unchanging nature of reality. The luminous, unconditioned, and quiescent aspect of Tathagatagarbha is like the unwavering stillness at the bottom of the sea. The waves of ignorance are like the waves on the surface of the sea. This is the analogy being used. So where does this wind of ignorance come from? In fact, compared to the vast, deep essence of the ocean, it is something that arises suddenly. Just like outer space is an unconditioned Dharma, it is eternally unchanging and eternal. But in terms of the nature of space itself, the drifting clouds high above appear quite suddenly, yet they do not represent the true and original essence of the mind. Because when you attain Buddhahood, when you reach the end of the 10th Bhumi, all ignorance, including the alaya consciousness and all mental consciousnesses, will transform. It will naturally fall away. Therefore, compared to the luminosity of the Tathagatagarbha itself, one has a kind of enduring quality, and when you reach Buddhahood, it is simply the original essence manifesting again. Other than this, there is no other very essence that manifests once more. From this perspective, the wind of ignorant afflictions should be considered something that arises quite suddenly. This suddenness, from the perspective of our perception, may go unnoticed. But in reality, using the simple analogy of clouds in the sky, when comparing the unconditioned nature of clouds with the conditioned phenomenon, relatively speaking, we understand that they appear only due to occasional causes and specific conditions. Therefore, we can say that this state of ignorance can be abandoned. But the essence of the Tathagatagarbha cannot be abandoned. When you attain Buddhahood, it is fully manifest. It's just that, for the time being, it is obscured by such appearances. This is the same in Chan Buddhism and the same in Vajrayana Buddhism. These waves are inseparable from the ocean water. When you realize this, the waves are no different than the ocean. They are one and the same. When you do not realize this, the ocean appears calm while the waves surge and roar. So between these, there are certain differences in appearance, but in the true nature of reality, there is no difference. Why is it that nowadays Tibetan Buddhism and Chinese Han Buddhism often say that all our thoughts and intentions are nothing but wisdom? From this perspective, all appearances are in fact not different from the true nature of Tathagatagarbha. Looking at it from that particular point of view, what we call ignorance, in its very essence, is just like the nature of waves never being separate from the ocean water. It has never been apart from the wisdom of Tathagatagarbha, not even for an instant. It is just that we have not yet fully realized this truth. Now, for the second question, under the background of dependent origination and emptiness that you mentioned, how are all the rules, such as the law of cause and effect across the 3 times, established? Actually, this should be understood in the following way. Dependent origination and emptiness are discussed in the context of the second turning of the Dharma wheel. Dependent origination and emptiness refer to the emptiness of the essence and the dependent arising of appearances. Both can manifest. There are two levels of rules. The first is the rule of its essence. The rule of its essence is that, apart from emptiness, not even the slightest thing among all phenomena can be found. Apart from emptiness, not even the tiniest bit can be found. This inability to find is not something Buddhism merely claims verbally. It is entirely when we use Nagarjuna Bodhisattvas, investigating 6 treatises on the middle way, any wise person must admit, that ultimately it is indeed determined to be emptiness. However, determining emptiness is only about its essence. So what is it like when it manifests? When it manifests, it still does not depart from the rules of the 6 realms of samsara as they are now. Emptiness is interdependent, and being interdependent is emptiness. So all current phenomena, its essence and emptiness, have never been separate. However, many people may not know this at present. They think, for example, that if something is empty, yesterday, when we were at the University of Science and Technology, some professors also asked, if all is empty, how does causality across time work? Aren't emptiness and existence contradictory? In fact, they aren't. Physics and quantum mechanics also show that essence and appearance are not the same. This is something scientists also acknowledge. The phenomena that appear before us are just one aspect, but does its essence appear before our naked eyes? This is something observed through scientific instruments. In the final analysis, we realize that the fundamental true nature of matter is indeed like this. This kind of appearance can be discovered through various other means. Therefore, all of these current rules, in terms of our present language, should be established on appearances. For any rule based on appearances, its essence is dependent on emptiness and dependent origination. This has never been separate, nor has it ever been apart from it. We can use Madhyamaka logical reasoning to observe this principle of non-separation. In the end, you can also reach this conclusion, or through meditation and certain Vajrayana practices. By practicing and recognizing your mind's true nature, you will know it. In fact, the essence of appearance is emptiness, and the essence of emptiness can also be appearance. Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness form. This is the principle. All right, thank you.
Khenpo, after listening to your lecture, I feel like it was a wonderful teaching. I am Professor Yao Xingfu from the Department of Philosophy, and I also teach courses on religious studies. You have also given our students a lesson in religious studies. So I would like to ask, what work and progress has Tibetan Buddhism made in dialogue and exchanges with domestic religions, including Christianity and Islam, as well as with international Christianity and Islam? What efforts and advancements have been made in these dialogues and exchanges? Thank you.
All right. First of all, I would especially like to express my gratitude and thank the teachers for actively participating, especially for consistently bringing these important religious courses to our students over such a long period. I truly believe that when students are in the process of transforming their core values in life, even a little bit of understanding and knowledge about religion, no matter how small it may seem, can provide them with a profound sense of guidance and clarity. The profound impact that this specific wisdom has on the entirety of their life's journey may very well surpass the influence of other types of knowledge they could acquire. As we look at the world today, Tibetan Buddhism has established a significant presence internationally, now present in what some say is more than 140 countries, although I personally haven't counted the exact number of those nations. In fact, numerous countries around the world have established dedicated centers and research institutions where there is an extensive amount of ongoing study and research in this area. In the traditional Han regions throughout the past, the Gelug school held a prominent and lasting position. Including Master Fazun, he translated many scriptures and treatises belonging to the traditional Gelug school of Buddhism. During the Republic of China period, it was quite widely promoted. Prior to that specific period, throughout the long spans of the Yuan and Ming dynasties, and heavily influenced by the leadership of Kublai Khan during his reign, as well as the later governance of the Kangxi and Qianlong emperors from that historical era onward, this practice was very extensively and widely promoted across the vast Han regions of the country. As for the situation today, in many different regions that I am personally aware of, the general promotion is very much in line with the way Chinese Buddhism is promoted across various places, particularly in the current climate among groups of educated lay intellectuals. There are a substantial number of people who have a deep understanding of Tibetan Buddhism, and in the present day, when it comes to our communication with other religions, indeed some Tibetan Buddhist organizations overseas often organize and host academic seminars. Furthermore, there are currently some very significant ongoing discussions taking place. If our preparations are successful, then by next July we will also be firmly established in Hong Kong. This initiative will include the study of Christianity, Islam, Taoism, Confucianism, and various other major world religions, all of which will be hosted at the Hong Kong Institute of Education, which provides a truly dedicated and comprehensive platform for these important cultural and academic exchanges. Every religion across the world can be inclusive. It is religious in nature and has a natural inclusiveness. Here, we are also currently preparing to host a major global event, which will serve as a dedicated platform for mutual communication and understanding. It is a place where there can be truly equal exchanges and meaningful interactions among each other. Not too long ago, I also had the opportunity to participate in an interfaith event held at the Academy of Social Sciences. There were representatives from various religions from more than 10 countries. They held a forum on religion and charity. At that event, each religion also expressed its own views. Confucianism had its Confucian perspective. Taoism had the Taoist perspective, and Christianity had the Christian perspective. But at the time, I heard more from the Christian perspective. Moreover, Christian thought, especially their efforts to help others, seemed particularly strong. Buddhism and other traditional religions seem to focus exclusively on their own spiritual practice aspects and internal beliefs. In my impression, including Buddhism, they are relatively weaker in this regard. Many Buddhists talk about their own cultivation, but the fundamental concept of how to provide care for our society and how to effectively help vulnerable groups, at least from my own perspective. At that time, many people in the United States were also talking about Chinese Christians, saying that they might have a broader vision and see further ahead. A great number of these individuals have a strong sense of mission. They feel that we should offer help to all those who are currently suffering. They have a very powerful sense of mission themselves. Each person's sincere words were entirely unselfish, so it left a lasting soul impression on me. Even Buddhists may need to learn from the various different strengths of other religions around the world. Otherwise, we will always think that we are already very good. However, if it so happens that our spirit is not understood, I'm afraid that in the future we will still encounter some unfortunate setbacks in history.
Most respected Khenpo Sodargye, hello. I sincerely apologize for my boldness in speaking. I have just finished listening to your teaching, and I found it to be very enlightening and deeply meaningful for me. I noticed that you were emphasizing a particular theme just now. That is, in Tibetan Buddhism, there is a strong emphasis on the mind of benefiting all sentient beings. This attitude of letting go of self-interest and benefiting others to a certain level becomes bodhicitta. In this degenerate age, sentient beings have strong habitual tendencies. Nowadays, the phenomenon of being selfish and self-centered is truly serious. Changing these habitual tendencies may not happen quickly. So, could I respectfully ask the Venerable Master to compassionately explain the merits and benefits of bodhicitta? Thank you.
The merits and benefits of bodhicitta are detailed in the first chapter of the Indian treatise, The Way of the Bodhisattva. I think changing a person at the fundamental level is not very easy. Especially changing the mind is not very easy. Therefore, whether it is Tibetan Buddhism or Chinese Han Buddhism, after completing one's studies, one should undergo a period of relatively long-term training. This is extremely important. So I think, as I believe I have previously pointed out before when teaching this treatise, the profound merits and extensive benefits of developing bodhicitta are explored in great detail within the Bodhisattva's training treatise, as well as being extensively taught throughout the first chapter of the renowned master Shantideva's classic text, The Way of the Bodhisattva. Furthermore, the sacred Avatamsaka Sutra specifically discusses the vast merits of bodhicitta. Therefore, if we look at these related foundational classics and treatises, it should be very good.
Hello, respected Khenpo Rinpoche. Practicing Buddhism in our daily lives can be more challenging for those of us living here. Now, I kept being a vegetarian for 2 years. I always wanted to generate bodhicitta. However, the mind of renunciation cannot be generated. Therefore, bodhicitta cannot be attained. I will not ask any more questions regarding spiritual practice. However, I still have 2 more theoretical questions that I would like to ask you today. I sincerely hope that Khenpo can provide some guidance on these specific points for me. The first question concerns the various views held by Dignaga and Dharmakirti regarding the fundamental nature of direct perception. What is your understanding of their views of direct perception? That is my first question. The second is a question I am very concerned about. I really want to know that Nagarjuna and the Yogacara school, and also the great Master Tsongkhapa, their profound philosophical explanations of emptiness. I would like to hear your own personal wisdom understanding of truth. Thank you.
As was just mentioned, I think bodhicitta and renunciation are not the issues here. Is that right? Let's actually not talk about that. Neither of us will discuss it. If you don't talk about it, I will not either. Now, regarding the first question, which is about the Buddhist logic system, the actual original founder of Buddhist logic. Actually, Buddhist scriptures already contain Buddhist logic. Including the 10 Ground Sutra and many other scriptures, there is knowledge of Buddhist logic. This Buddhist logic, in fact, was later founded by the Indian scholar Dignaga and then subsequently elaborated by Dharmakirti. As was just mentioned in Buddhist logic, a central issue is that of direct perception, because in Buddhist logic, when we want to establish any kind of conclusion, we need direct perception and inference, as well as yogic direct perception, scriptural authority, and so on. When examining the specific differences between the various types of direct perception, we can see that generally speaking, whether we are considering the foundational view of the Master Dignaga, who explored this in great detail within the Compendium of Buddhist Logic, or the perspective of Dharmakirti, who also provided a comprehensive discussion on these matters in the Commentary on Valid Cognition, both scholars offer profound insights into the subject. So, what exactly is the common thread that they all share? The most fundamental and crucial point to understand is that whether we are talking about the eye, ear, nose, tongue, or any of the other sensory faculties, when the 6 faculties perceive forms, sounds, smells, tastes, and the 6 objects, all the distinct and unique characteristics of external objects are perceived and apprehended in a purely non-conceptual manner. This is a philosophical position that both Dignaga and Dharmakirti acknowledge. So there should be no conceptualization at all, and the perception occurs simultaneously with the object. The way it apprehends things is manifestly clear and distinct, not vague or ambiguous. Regarding these particular philosophical points, there should be no fundamental differences at all. Therefore, I believe that, as I have just mentioned, in their respective ultimate essence views, there is no difference at all in terms of how the unique characteristics of phenomena are apprehended. As for Nagarjuna of the Madhyamaka school, and the way emptiness is established in the Yogacara school and by Dzogchen, in fact, it remains one of the most widely debated topics in Tibetan Buddhism. But generally, we believe that in some of Dzogchen's treatises, at the beginning for beginners, he establishes a mere emptiness or single emptiness for them to discern. But in the final analysis, as he carefully explains in his teachings, much like the great master Dzogchen did himself, when discussing the profound concept of emptiness described within his famous work, Praise of Dependent Origination, this specific kind of emptiness is truly unique. It is exactly the same as the emptiness that Nagarjuna describes in chapter 27 of the root stanzas of the Middle Way. They are in complete agreement. So in this way, whether it is the Yogacara treatises, the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, or the mind-only perspective, when considering the ultimate concept as a whole, in ultimate emptiness, it transcends all extremes and elaborations, yet it provisionally holds the Yogacara view of mind-only phenomena. This method of integration was advocated by a great scholar in Tibetan Buddhism who was known as Jamgonju Mipham Rinpoche. In his commentary on the Ornament of the Middle Way, he combines these 2 perspectives, specifically Yogacara and Madhyamaka schools. In Madhyamaka, these are provisional Svatantrika and ultimate Prasangika views. He integrates these 2 perspectives together. His exposition is truly, truly exceptional. If you read it, you will see how the original explanations were given. The most ultimate views of Bodhisattva, Nagarjuna, Aryadeva, and the Master Candrakirti. So, in this regard, I really think one of the most impressive works is, as I have mentioned before, the one composed by Master Tsongkhapa. The commentary on Entering the Middle Way, Illuminating the Intent, a commentary on the profound meaning. These teachings closely align with the ultimate meaning as taught by Bodhisattva Nagarjuna.
Excuse me, Khenpo, if I may, I have another question for you. Regarding the concepts of non-abiding, emptiness, and suchness, do you truly regard them as the ultimate absolute reality?
The suchness described by Bodhisattva Asanga in the provisional Yogacara view. This is explained from the perspective of the Yogacara school. From my personal point of view, ultimately, I do not accept this. That suchness truly and permanently exists. It only truly exists in terms of appearance, but that is not its true nature.
Respected Khenpo, I feel so deeply moved and truly inspired after listening to your wisdom today. I have had a lot of contact with monks from Xiyuan Temple, such as Master Jikun, for example. I have a superficial understanding of Chinese Han Buddhism, but I know almost nothing about Tibetan Buddhism. So after listening today, my biggest takeaway is the altruistic mind. I feel that one needs compassion, strength, and wisdom. But there is one thing, after so many years of interacting with the monks at Xiyuan Temple, I have a certain feeling. That is, within Chinese Han Buddhism, the debates between different schools are very intense. And what is the result of these debates? They lead to divisions between factions. Even their specific ways of conduct differ greatly. I would like to ask, in Tibetan Buddhism, is there a phenomenon similar to what we see in Chinese Han Buddhism? How do you view this, considering that there are so many scriptures in Tibetan Buddhism? How do you interpret these sacred scriptures? For example, just now Professor Wang asked a question. That was your own perspective. So if there are debates between different schools, when it comes to interpreting scriptures, which interpretation do you think is the most reasonable?
Okay then, from my own personal point of view, in traditional Chinese Han Buddhism, for example, between Chan, Huayan and Pure Land schools, and even between different temples, even within the Pure Land school, there are differences between one temple and another. For instance, some time ago when we attended a charity forum, a Buddhist organization once said, if those people decide to show up, then we will not attend. I heard them saying this back at that time. In contemporary times, these two organizations are both extremely large organizations. They are actually quite influential internationally, but at that time, their leaders said, if one of them comes, the other will not come. When I heard this, I felt quite disheartened. This really isn't reasonable. But does this kind of thing happen in Tibetan Buddhism? It has indeed happened in history. As for now, I would say that on a large scale, it doesn't happen. Because, for example, at the Buddhist Institute where I am staying, it includes all the different traditional schools. We built a very large and magnificent stupa. Around the stupa, there are halls for each school, every Tibetan Buddhist school, as well as Chinese Han Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, and all Buddhist sects have their own halls. What does this symbolize? It means that our ultimate views are in harmony, although for the time being we each have our own refuge, ceremonies, and some different rituals. But ultimately, our motivation is initially the same, and our actions are all to help others. In the end, attaining Buddhahood, there is no difference. Last night, I discussed this with Master Jikun. We need a common platform. Chinese Han Buddhism and Tibetan Buddhism also need to communicate with each other. In the traditions of Chinese Han Buddhism, there should be no mutual exclusion or conflict either. Nor should there be within Tibetan Buddhism. They all come from Shakyamuni Buddha. Moreover, this kind of spirit is just like in Christianity. Christians everywhere are very united. Everyone shares a common sense of identity. I belong to this religion. But in Buddhism, we have always been divided into small sects from the very beginning. I am a disciple of this master. I am a disciple of that master. There are differences between masters and also between disciples. If you expand it a bit, there are differences between monasteries, and if you expand it further, between different schools. Such small, family-like, disunited ways of operating. These factors could potentially pose certain significant risks to the long-term sustainable development of Buddhism in the future. Currently, it can be said that Tibetan Buddhism remains quite peaceful and harmonious in many different respects. We also sincerely hope that all Buddhists around the world and even the devoted followers of other religions, including non-Buddhists and people of all backgrounds, can find a way to live together in peace. We should create meaningful opportunities for mutual tolerance, understanding, and learning. In this way, many misunderstandings and unreasonable prejudices can be eliminated in the future, and ultimately we can achieve a common goal.
Hello, Khenpo. I am actually one of your students. Last year, I participated in the first Youth Buddhist Academic Seminar. Khenpo, I have a question. Buddhism says all is subjective mind manifested and internal consciousness transformed. What do these profound doctrinal terms mean, and what is being transformed? Please teach us.
Your question is quite profound. Even I find it a bit challenging. Let me try to explain it on a surface level, because in the Buddhist text, Yoga Karabhumi Shastra, there is consciousness, there is mind, and there is mentation. When viewed in a broad and general sense, these three are fundamentally and entirely the same. However, from a more differentiated perspective, they are deeply related to the true underlying nature of all things. They are also closely connected to the outward and superficial appearance, as well as the specific manner in which they relate to things, and a variety of other significant factors. When the mind actively engages with any object, it arrives at various conclusions. From an overall perspective, there is essentially no difference between mind, consciousness, and mentation in terms of what they apprehend, whether we say all phenomena are created by the mind or all phenomena are transformed by the mind. In fact, according to the specific view of the Yogacara school, this actually carries a deeply profound and significant meaning. It is not merely a theoretical framework. It is a genuine and direct realization attained through actual practice. If we sincerely study these teachings, all phenomena are by nature inseparable from our mind and consciousness, just like a dream. This is what the great Madhyamaka master Chandrakirti explained in the revered Entering the Middle Way treatise. Like a dream, it's a perfect fit. When we dream, no matter how long it lasts or how vivid it appears, when you finally wake up, it truly does not exist. In the same way, the Yogacara school teaches that everything we see is created by the mind. This is something we can deeply relate to. Although we can now perceive certain aspects of its outward appearances, whether those appearances are beautiful, ugly, or even their very existence, it is completely and fundamentally connected to your mind. What your mind becomes rests entirely in your own hands. For example, if my mind has already attained freedom, and I am an extraordinary accomplished practitioner, wherever I go, I am happy. Every single place is just like a paradise. But if my mind is especially restless and I have no spiritual realization at all, wherever I may go, even if I were to go to heaven, I would still feel extremely troubled and restless. I see now that some only children who are especially well off, the so-called second-generation rich or second-generation officials, these kids, no matter how luxurious the car they ride in, even when they are staying in the most luxurious hotels, they feel deeply miserable, sad, and completely hopeless. On the contrary, certain children from Tibetan area who are especially pure and innocent, no matter where they go, they consistently seem to feel incredibly happy and content. So our mind really does have a very powerful and direct effect on our experience. If people fail to fully grasp this and try to satisfy their minds entirely with purely physical and material possessions, they will probably be very miserable.
Venerable Master, hello. I am a doctoral student majoring in Marxist principles at the School of Management. I have a question. This question is related to a story. This story addresses the complex issue of how we evaluate people's actions. It tells the tale of a monk and a butcher who lived nearby. The two of them made a pact to wake up early every single morning. The butcher rose early to work and make a living, while the monk got up at the same time to recite his Buddhist scriptures. Each morning, whichever one of them woke up first would wake the other so they could both get up and begin their daily work. In the end, after they both passed away, a surprising thing happened. The butcher was welcomed into heaven while the monk was sent to hell. The monk was confused and could not understand why he was being sent to the hell. God explained to him that by waking the butcher up every morning, the monk was making it possible for the man to go out and kill. On the other hand, when the butcher woke the monk, it was so that the monk could chant his sacred scriptures and help to save all living beings. This situation reflects the famous words of Karl Marx, who argued that all human activities are ultimately carried out for the sake of some form of benefit. Although these benefits can be divided into many levels, in the context of this story, our general understanding is that they woke each other up. In reality, each person did it so that the other would wake them up in return. I'm not quite sure if there are similar stories within the traditions of Tibetan Buddhism. How would you evaluate their actions? Thank you.
I think it might originally be a traditional story originating from Christianity, but I can also provide a detailed explanation of the meaning using some specific methods from Tibetan Buddhism. Actually, when we look closely at this particular situation, we see a stark contrast. The monk woke the butcher up mainly for the purpose of killing, while the butcher woke the monk up for the virtuous act of chanting the name of the Buddha. But if we apply our own spiritual theory to explain it, we should say that perhaps the first one, after he passed away from this world, really did find himself descending into the depths of hell. The monk ended up in hell because every single day of his life he was telling the butcher to take the lives of other living beings. In contrast to that, the butcher ascended to heaven. This is the specific outcome he created for himself. According to the understanding of Tibetan Buddhism or Buddhism in general, he is not in hell forever. Because of the merit he accumulated from chanting the Buddha's name, in the end he will definitely, it's just that he goes to hell first, and after suffering there, he will still ascend to heaven. As for the one goes to heaven, he first experiences happiness in the heavenly realm and then descends into the depths of hell to suffer. However, the Christian evaluation of the afterlife is just a brief and passing mention. It doesn't go into great detail in the same way that Buddhism does. In Buddhism, how karma is created, and after it's created, there are retributions. Like in Buddhism, there are different types of results. Ripened results, results similar to the cause, functional results, and so on. There are many kinds of results. These results are like a kind of cause. First you experience one type, then the result of another kind of cause turns into something else. It actually still has some ongoing internal processes running right now, so I honestly think it should be, on the surface, it seems unbelievable that he did good deeds but didn't receive any reward. But in the actual reality of the situation, this principle of cause and effect is still true. It's just that the narrative story simply didn't continue any further after that point. If you watch the entire advertisement and then continue watching, there should be a sequel waiting for you.
Hello, Khenpo. I am currently a doctoral student majoring in the field of film literature. Recently, there has been a very famous Chinese film directed by the renowned Ang Lee called Life of Pi. It has achieved truly great success both at the global box office and in terms of widespread public acclaim. Just a few days ago, I took a trip to Shanghai and visited the most incredibly bustling Xinhua bookstore in the city. While I was browsing through its prominent bestsellers section, I was very surprised to see the original novel of Life of Pi and your very latest book, which I believe is titled Achieve by Doing, placed right there side by side on the top bestsellers shelf. Witnessing this scene genuinely astonished me. In the past, we always thought that Tibetan Buddhism gave people in the Han regions a very mysterious impression. But now, thanks to the tireless, dedicated efforts of the Venerable Khenpos and other great spiritual masters, it is already possible to enter the bestsellers section of Xinhua bookstore. We can see such profound and truly wonderful teachings there. So, the question I have for you today is this. It is something that I would really like to ask you. The realization of Buddhahood through seeing one's true nature in Chan Buddhism, the enlightenment in Chan, and the accomplishment in Dzogchen, are there any similarities or differences between these two paths when it comes to ultimately attaining the fruit of Buddhahood?
The realization of one's true nature in Chan Buddhism or the attainment of Buddhahood in this very life in Dzogchen actually have different ways of being explained. In practice, the realization of one's true nature in Chan Buddhism is described as having several distinct levels or stages. And the attainment of Buddhahood in this very life in Vajrayana also has different levels and distinctions. But regarding these specific differences, I once wrote a piece called Dispelling the Confusion about Vajrayana Buddhism, because at that time, I noticed that a very small number of people from the Pure Land School did not understand Vajrayana and made some very serious slanders against it. Some even said that the claim of attaining Buddhahood in this very life in Vajrayana was too exaggerated. Later, I thought of using some terminology from Chan Buddhism. Actually, Chan Buddhism includes some cases from the Platform Sutra of the Sixth Patriarch and the entire story of the Platform Sutra. It also shows that recognizing the nature of mind can happen relatively quickly. It does not require a very long period of time. As a matter of fact, in Vajrayana as well, through the practice of Dzogchen, just a moment ago, during my discussion with everyone, I gave one or two simple examples of attaining the rainbow body. Phenomena like this are actually quite common and frequent. It could be said that what we lack most right now is a lot of the cultural background from Tibetan area. There is also very little of this on the internet. If these stories and all of these historical events were documented in writing, including if some of you scholars personally went to learn more about them. Some of the extraordinary states and signs of spiritual practice that have occurred in Tibetan area, these outcomes would be absolutely astonishing and truly incredible to witness. You might feel that this is the kind of the difference between Chan Buddhism and Vajrayana Buddhism. At that time, I cited many examples and teachings from Chan and Vajrayana Buddhist stories to illustrate this. When you have time, you can take a look at the Dispelling the Confusion about Vajrayana Buddhism.
Actually, I truly believe that there are still many friends here today who want to ask some questions and have a meaningful dialogue and exchange with Khenpo. But because time is limited, I believe that if we have the opportunity in the future, perhaps we can have another chance just like this one next time. Actually, if we say that the Master's initial lecture was a kind of elementary teaching, then, in the second stage, during the dialogue and exchange, I felt both sides' enthusiasm and wisdom were fully brought into play. It was wonderful, fully demonstrating Khenpo's eloquent debating skills. In the past, in Chinese Han Buddhism, we'd say a master had eloquence and was unimpeded in teaching and debate. Now I suddenly have another thought. This eloquence and unimpeded debate refers on one hand to teaching in a harmonious and effortless way according to the different capacities of sentient beings, using various skillful means, analogies, and words. Secondly, I feel that this is especially true in Tibetan Buddhism because it places great emphasis on Buddhist logic and systematic training in the teachings. It strongly emphasizes debate on doctrine and mutual argumentation. In these debates, one maintains one's own position. So I think the concept of debate on one hand refers to the harmonious and unobstructed teaching of the Dharma, and also the ability to defend one's own position and respond to questions. I truly admire this as well. To be honest, today's lecture is actually extremely good. It is such a rare and wonderful opportunity for all of us to experience together. Once again, we express our heartfelt gratitude for Khenpo's truly wonderful and inspiring talk, and we thank everyone for your very enthusiastic participation.